when I look at it objectively, the one thing that stands out for me is that Israel is not being treated like any other country at all. It just isn't, objectively. Israel is engaged in a military operation in Gaza in which the ratio of casualties among civilians to fighters is the lowest of any modern warfare in urban combat. Most of people don't even realize that, the recent flare-up with Hezbollah is caused by the fact that since October the 7th, Hezbollah has been attacking Israel every day. When I see the pager operation, it is clearly the most surgically targeted military operation in history. Yet we have politicians going on the airwaves and saying the indiscriminate attacks. And I'm going, do you even know what the word indiscriminate means? Now, and what I've also found is my grandfather was Jewish. I was raised as a Christian. My parents are Christians. But suddenly the fact that I'm a quarter Jewish became very important to a lot of people all of a sudden.
Really?
Yes, all of a sudden. And I know that the answer to why this is happening in many people's minds is anti-Semitism. They will say, people just hate the Jews and this is why Israel gets special treatment. But when I saw those young people on those protests, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't hate Jews. They don't know anything.
That's right.
Why is that happening?
Well, they are going along with, the fashionable consensus. It's a thing. It's not just a cause. You say Israel is treated in a completely different way to everybody else.
Yeah.
Any other country. It's absolutely correct. But the cause is different from any other cause because, I remember, the great fights, the great fight against apartheid, South Africa, against apartheid in South Africa. And, it was a very worthy cause. A lot of people were signed up to it. They thought about it a lot. They marched, but it didn't take over the society in the way this has done. I mean, here you have the Palestine flag, so-called, appearing on, it appears everywhere as a motif. And put aside why this is happening and, the amount of money and organization that goes behind that, put that to one side. It's kind of omnipresent and it's unchallenged. The BBC regards it as a cause which is beyond challenge. It regards it as the cause of good versus evil. It's got it absolutely the wrong way around. But if you're immersed in that kind of atmosphere and you're a young person and you are in the education world, and the education world is absolutely saturated with people who believe this, that good is evil and evil is good, then you're going to do that. The deeper question is why all those people who have influenced those impressionable young people have signed on to such a lunatic obsession. And ultimately, I can't really answer this because it is so fundamentally, outrageously absurd as to be really unanswerable. But there are certain obvious things that I would say. You talk about the pagers, and you say quite correctly this was the most surgical operation possible to take out thousands of the enemy combatants through this thing, and it's been turned into a war crime. And the way it's been turned into a war crime is people say, it was willfully taking an ordinary piece of household equipment, a pager, an ordinary thing, and booby-trapping it. Well, in fact, that's not true. These weren't ordinary things. These weren't ordinary pagers. These were specific devices issued by a terrorist army, Hezbollah, to its own people as weapons of war. These pagers are designed to call people to war. If they're reservists, they're called to war. If they are already active combatants, they're told where to go, what to do. They're weapons of war. And therefore, the pagers and the people holding them are absolutely legitimate targets. And one of the things that struck me about all that inversion, in which people were saying this was a war crime, was was the same thing that they've been saying throughout, that, Israel's defense against genocide is genocide. And what it means is that whatever Israel does to defend itself cannot be permitted.
Yes, this is what I've noticed. This is the thing that's been bothering me, because this is the bit I don't understand.
Okay, so
why is it that when Israel does, if this had happened in Britain, on a per capita basis, 35,000 people killed or captured and taken as hostages, or in America,
we
would have bombed the shit out of anyone who had stood next to the dog of the guy who did it. We would have turned countries into rubble.
That's right.
And yet when Israel targets pages, that's indiscriminate. Why? Why is that?
Various things are happening. First of all, even among people who are sympathetic or think they're sympathetic to Israel, including the British government, there is this very deeply felt view that Israel is fundamentally the problem in the region. If Israel wasn't there, there wouldn't be a problem. That's what they all think.
That's true.
And consequently, Israel has to be basically, if Israel is the problem, then Israel has to be stopped. And if Israel is defending itself, it becomes aggression. Because if Israel wasn't defending itself, there wouldn't be a war. Of course there wouldn't be a war. Every Israeli would be killed. Okay? But of course, those people who are saying this don't follow that logic through. But that's effectively what they're saying. So there's that. Israel is perceived as the problem because of an entirely false view of history in which Britain was complicit. Britain is actually the cause of Israel's beleaguerment, because it was Britain in the 1930s, having been handed this internationally binding obligation to settle the Jews for their national homeland throughout what is now the State of Israel, West Bank and Gaza, reneged on it. And faced with the Arabs who were trying to slaughter every Jew as a matter of Islamic holy war, because no Jewish homeland could be permitted in that area from their point of view, faced with that uprising, Britain didn't say, "Excuse me, Arab world, this is not on." Britain said, "Oh, Arab world, have part of what we're giving to the Jews instead. Have it. You can have it." And the Arabs said, "We want it all. We want the Jews gone." And the rest is history. Britain continues to maintain that position. So in fact, you could say Britain is actually at the heart of this problem. Anyway, there is this, as I say, fundamental belief in the British ruling class and the Western ruling class and the Western intelligence that Israel is the problem. But it's something deeper than that, which I think you're kind of hinting at. There is a view that the Jews are the problem. And this view is, I was going to say buried, but I don't mean concealed. I mean, it is a kind of fundamental part of Western culture that, what I'm talking about is anti-Semitism. But the part of anti-Semitism which says the Jews are fundamentally a threat to everybody else, because fundamentally they have a kind of demonic power. And this is true anti-Semitism. The Jews have a kind of demonic power because there are so few of them, but look how powerful they are. They're behind capitalism. They're all lawyers. They're all TV moguls and so on. And so the idea of Jewish power, if you look at anti-Semitism throughout the centuries, Christian anti-Semitism, racial anti-Semitism, there is this paranoia, clinical paranoia about Jewish power. I say it's clinical paranoia because it's untrue. It's based on nonsense. The Jews are the most persecuted people in history. How can they have demonic power? But nevertheless, there is a belief. The Jews and power, that is the problem. You have Israel. Israel is powerful. Israel has made itself powerful on the basis that only if Israel has military power can it fulfill its sacred oath that never again will the Holocaust happen.
Melanie, do you...
And so here's my point. That cannot be permitted. You cannot have Jewish power. And so the idea of Israel defending itself with massive power, because it's facing a massive threat to itself from forces who are literally billions of people in the Arab and Muslim world who wish it to be destroyed. That cannot be, because it's Jewish power. I feel that very strongly, and that's part of the wider problem of anti-Semitism that we're seeing.
Melanie, do you not think as well the issue is that this conflict is incredibly complicated? You have to read about history, you have to understand the politics behind it, you have to understand the religious element, you need to tackle the thorny issue of Islamism within Islam, radical jihad, these groups. A lot of people simply don't have the time,
for sure,
the patience or the inclination, let's be fair, to want to do the reading and the work in order to understand. And then you come to the point that it's complicated. And there is no such thing, these sweeping narratives that the people buy into. It's just easy. So it's easier for people just to take one particular point, hold up a placard saying, I want a globalist intifada. It makes me feel good. I'm on the right side of history.
Yep.
And here we are.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And this is the road to hell. I have to say, and a lot of us in the Jewish community think this, now we understand why the Holocaust happened. By which I mean, now we understand how, this is the question everyone's asked all these years. Okay, there were the Nazis. They believed what they believed. That was terrible. But they were facilitated by millions of people in Germany and in Eastern Europe looking the other way. How could that have happened? And now we understand. Now we understand, for all these reasons that we're talking about, because we're seeing it happening now in real time. We're seeing how the Western world, faced with a genocidal, barbaric set of people who did the most appalling things on October 7, and who did it as part of an axis of evil, of true evil, of people who say they wish to eradicate Jews from the face of the earth, and they wish to destroy the state of Israel. Faced with this, which is genocide, a genocidal intention, true genocide, the idea of wiping out a people and wiping out a country on the basis you don't like the people. Faced with that, the West is saying, well, they have a point. And now we understand how the Holocaust happened, because it's the same thing with the same kind of people doing the same kind of thing. These people in the Islamic world, I call them, I think the late Christopher Hitchens, possibly the first person to call them this, Islamo-Nazis. They're not just Islamo-Nazis because they kind of act like the Nazis. If you look at the long and complicated history, the history of the Palestinian Arabs in pre-Israel Palestine, they were Hitler's legions in the Middle East. Their religious leader made an agreement with Hitler that if Hitler won the war, then he, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, would ensure that every Jew in the Middle East, not just in Palestine, every Jew in the Middle East would be slaughtered. That's the heirs of the Palestinians. That man, Haj Amin, is Mahmoud Abbas's pin-up boy. He says it. He's my hero, right? So this is what we're dealing with.
Can we just stop? Because there's a lot of people who wouldn't know who Mahmoud Abbas is. Could you just explain?
Mahmoud Abbas is the leader of the Palestinian Authority, which is supposedly the moderate part of the Palestinian people. Hamas is supposedly the militant terrorist part, and the Palestinian Authority are the people that the British government and the American government and Western governments deal with. They fund their educational programs which teach all their children for generations to hate and loathe and fear the Jewish people, to kill all Jews, that their highest motivation as children is to grow up and kill Jews and steal their land. That's what they're taught. That's what the British government funds. That's what the American administrations have funded. So they are led in their moderate Palestinian Authority by a man, Mahmoud Abbas, who says, Haj Amin al-Husseini, great hero of the Palestinian people, he is my role model. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who are Islamo-Nazis, And the West, as they did in the 1930s, says, we should negotiate with them. We should, find common cause. They have a point. Same thing. It's very frightening. And the Jewish people, Jewish community here, America, and in Israel. In Israel, they're fighting an actual war, of desperate war. But the Jewish people is having to grapple with this now. That, those of us in the Jewish community who thought that with the discovery of Auschwitz, anti-Semitism would be a thing of the past and never again, and the West had learned what evil was, it had looked it in the face and it actually had defeated it, and we would be safe. Now we know. Now we know. It's the same thing. It's the same thing happening again, and only the Jewish people can look after itself.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide, or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.